this regular meeting of the Monument Board of Trustees, January 21st, 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Romero, would you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Here.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Here.
Trustee Koopman,
Here.
Trustee Romanello,
Here.
and Trustee Stevens.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before us, we have a consent agenda. Is there any modifications to the agenda?
I'd like to move to add an executive session to tonight's agenda to develop a negotiation strategy and instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6402-4E regarding the salary and compensation package of the future chief of police.
And at the end of the meeting,
Yes, at the end of the meeting.
is there any other modifications? Do we have a motion to approve as modified?
Motion to approve as modified agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Romero, would you take roll, please?
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Here.
Trustee Koopman,
Yes.
Trustee Romanello,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott.
Yes.
First item on the agenda is a proclamation recognizing January 26th through February 1st, 2020 as School Choice Week in Monument. This was a proclamation brought to me from the National School Choice Society. Was there any comments or concerns with this proclamation?
What, Mr. Mayor, what does that mean by school choice? What is that referring to, please?
That's referring to not just public schools, but private schools and homeschools.
Okay, so by family's choice of direction
Correct.
they elected. Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or questions? If there are no objections, I will have Trustee Clark read the proclamation.
Whereas all children in Monument should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas Monument recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in Monument to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of Monument, and whereas Monument is home to a multitude of high-quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in the home, and whereas educational variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community, and whereas Monument has many high-quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Town of Monument, Colorado hereby recognize January 26th through February 1st, 2020 as Monument School Choice Week and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens.
And that is proclaim this day the 21st. Thank you, Trustee Clark. Next item on the agenda, recognition. Ms. Holmes. Oh, I'm actually taking. That's not what it says here.
Mr. Mayor, trustees, since Mr. Foreman came on, he instituted a new Employee of the Month program, and it's been really fun seeing our employees recognized throughout the year for this. When selecting these employees, it's interesting to sit around the table at managers' meetings and hear the different managers talk about which employees should get it, what attributes they have, and what they bring to the table, and why they deserve to be recognized. Some of the more common things that were told: steadfast work ethic, reliability, they're committed to the mission here in Monument, self-starter, proactive, and honest. Employees with these traits stand to make an organization better on all levels, and tonight I'm proud to recognize an employee who exhibits all of these traits and more, Ms. Shannon Walker. For almost 7 years now, Shannon has been an incredibly familiar face around Town Hall. Starting as an administrative assistant, Shannon now works to support both human resources and the finance department as an HR benefits specialist. We can often be pigeonholed into our titles at work. Shannon's never allowed this to happen. She's an employee who will always volunteer for extra assignments, anything from organizing the town website to acting as a photographer, and just about anything in between. Shannon has never hesitated to raise her hand to help out any department across the town. I'd like to ask all of you to join me in recognizing Shannon Walker for her hard work, dedication, and loyalty to the town of Monument for December 2019's Employee of the Month.
Congratulations, Shannon. And, along with that, she also helps me and Erica and everybody else out when we're trying to solve the major problems for the town of Monument. So we really appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you very much.
Introductions, Chief Burke.
Mayor and board members, I want to introduce to you one of our new employees. This is Evan Cox, and the title might throw you a little bit, Police Services Specialist. You would probably know this position better as Code Enforcement Officer. Candidly, currently the size of the town of Monument, there really is not enough work to keep one person fully busy and active in strictly code enforcement duties. So we recognize that and have identified a number of additional duties for Evan to perform, and consequently we changed the title to be a little broader and catch some of those other duties, but I certainly wanted to introduce you to him. Evan started with the town in October. He comes to us with a background having served 8 years in the military, U.S. Army. He has served as an animal control officer, and he actually served 8 years as a law enforcement officer with the Sheriff's Department in Texas, where he did patrol deputy work. He was a SWAT negotiator and a detective. So we've, I think, found a number of productive and effective assignments that allows us to capitalize on his many skills and abilities. Since he's been on board, he's gone through the Colorado Association of Code Enforcement Officer Basic Certification Program, and they will be offering the advanced program this coming fall, and plans are to send him to that. So anyway, wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to meet one of our new employees, and Evan Cox.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Chief, can I ask one or two questions? Is that
Sure.
acceptable? I mean, I think it's good we have a negotiator, because the chickens are back in Jackson Creek, and for those that have been around, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I think this is excellent, because obviously the budget and what have you, and having additional services. Do you have, though, a forecast as far as how that time split is gonna work? Only from the standpoint that and we've all agreed as far as getting proactive. I mean, there's, on this side of the town alone, if you go down the alleyways between cars and things of that nature. So what is your strategy or your projection, how that's gonna work?
Sir, I think it would be premature for me at this point to say, it's a 40% this, 30% this, 20% this, particularly given my short tenure and experience here, Evan's limited time here. So I think, to be honest, that's one of those kinds of things that we will evaluate as we go. But clearly, his first and foremost priority is code enforcement duties. One of the things that we certainly want to do and put a great deal more focus and attention on is education, making sure that everybody in the community knows, in fact, what the code enforcement requirements are, to be more proactive. and to do everything we can to ensure voluntary compliance. But I'm not trying to evade your question. I just honestly, especially for me at this point in time, I think it's a little premature to
No,
give you
I
a
think
breakdown.
that's a fair answer. Maybe to Mike, maybe this is something you can come with. You know, it's again, prior we had somebody based on calls, but we're trying to beautify the community and the economic development for Old Downtown, and there's issues that we're all aware of, and it's time to take action. So we would hate to lose that percentage for all the other responsibilities, especially when the intent was a code enforcement officer first, and now he's chartered on these additional responsibilities, and we don't want to lose focus of that, because we're gonna be in the same position next year in 5 years past.
Right, and I think that was our original goal, is to have him be a code enforcement officer, and that's still the goal, is his number one priority is gonna be code enforcement. But also, at the same time, we feel like that we can use his skills to be able to alleviate some of the other job duties that other people are doing and be able to have more police officers in the street.
Right, just as long as we don't lose focus
Right.
of why he was brought on board to the town of Monument.
Yeah,
I
we're
think
definitely gonna make that a
that's-
priority.
We just can't lose that vision.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Holmes, is this the real one this time?
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I wanted to give you a quick introduction to our new town accountant, Jessica Hollinger. So this is the start of her third week here with the town of Monument, and we're very excited to have her joining our team. She has her bachelor's degree in business administration accounting, and comes to us with 5 years of prior accounting job experience. She also recently in 2019 completed her master's in accounting as well. So she and I have already started working to catch up on the daily accounting stuff that we've been behind in since the beginning of my employment here a couple of months ago. We plan to start bringing the past month's financial statements to you in the upcoming meetings in the next month and going forward, as well as the sales tax reports. And we're currently working on all the year-end stuff, payroll, everything, W-2s, 1099s. And then we're planning to start focusing on a thorough account analysis of 2019 and working for preparation for the budget. So just wanted to bring Jessica here tonight to be able to put a face with the name and for you guys to meet her. So
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Item 7, ordinance. Ordinance number 032020, an ordinance approving the final plan development site plan for Sanctuary Point Phase 3. Ms. Flynn.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. Tonight I'll be presenting to you Sanctuary Point Phase 3. This first map is taken from our zoning map. It shows the location of Sanctuary Point development, which is next to 2 other PDs, Home Place Ranch and Promontory Point. The second map is an aerial of Sanctuary Point development and the developments surrounding it, which are in the town of Monument and El Paso County. The third map shows the exact location of Sanctuary Point development, which consists of 3 phases. Tonight I'll be discussing the third and final phase. The fourth map is the approved PD sketch plan from 2006, allowing up to 600 units for Sanctuary Point development. The fifth map is a map taken from the approved sketch plan, which depicts Phase 3. Sanctuary Point development consists of 3 phases. Phase 3 is 72 single-family residential units, which is the last allowable of the 600 total units for Sanctuary Point development. It's an approximately 117 acres. Phase 3 is divided into 2 sub-phases, A and B. Phase A is south of Sanctuary Rim Drive, and Phase B is north of Sanctuary Rim Drive. Parks and open space. The whole Sanctuary Point has a principal park, which is a public park, which is 8.62 acres. There will be play structure and seating area, large field area for informal recreation and play. Will be encircled by concrete sidewalks with connections to the wider trail system, which is the continuation of El Paso County Regional Trail. This trail is a network of open space and trails that provide pedestrian connectivity throughout the project and to the county trail to the south. The overall density is approximately 0.6 dwelling units per acre, which is a very low density compared to phases 1 and 2, as you can see with the chart, the table below. There'll be 2 access points for Sanctuary Point Phase 3, which is at Sanctuary Rim Drive east to Baptist Road and Sanctuary Rim Drive west to Glen Eagle Drive. The 2 access points projected level of service. Please let me tell you what the definition of level of service is first before I go on. It is used to determine how well a transportation facility is operating from a traveler's perspective. Typically, 6 levels of service are defined and each assigned a letter of designation from A to F, with level of service A representing the best operating conditions and F the worst. Sanctuary Rim Drive east of Baptist Road is projected to operate at level of service C or better during peak hours. And Sanctuary Rim Drive to the west of Glen Eagle is projected to operate at level of service B or better during peak hours. Per the traffic study, all of Phase 3 is adequately supported by 2 proposed access points. At the Planning Commission hearing on January 8th, 2020, 2 members of the public spoke about the project with concerns primarily related to drainage near Promontory Point and the trail system along Higbee Estates. With our applicant has explained that there is no issue between the 2 of these. And the PC voted 7-0 to recommend approval. Tonight, we recommend approval to you for this development of Sanctuary Point Phase 3. Next, our applicant will be given their presentation.
Okay, any questions for staff before we go to the applicant? Okay, the applicant would like to begin.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Andrea Barlow. I am with NES and we are representing Classic Homes as part of this project for Sanctuary Point Phase 3. And get the slideshow going. And
It's not a,
it's not, the slideshow's not up. You need to start slideshow. I can't see that far, so. That's it. Lovely. Thank you. So I think you're familiar with the location now. Debbie did a good job of explaining that, so I'll skip over that slide. The Phase 3 is the final phase of the original sketch plan. We were before you not so long ago with Phase 2, where we had unanimous approval, and we had worked extensively with the Kingswood neighbours on that project to provide the connection of Sanctuary Rim Drive all the way across to Glen Eagle Drive with that first phase of Phase 2. So that is now in place. Sanctuary Point now makes that connection to Glen Eagle, and that was a requirement of our Phase 2 development. So the original sketch plan for 600 units, I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about our conformity to this. And the first phase was approved in April 2015. There was a big gap, obviously, between the sketch plan approval and the first phase. That was due to the recession. It was put on hold during that period, and then we came back, and the first phase was approved in 2015 for 257 units. And then we amended Phase F of Phase 1 to change the product type. You may recall that, and that reduced the number of units for that phase to 255. In March of last year, we were back before you with our Phase 2 project. Like I say, we had the extensive discussions on that connection to Glen Eagle Drive of Sanctuary Rim Drive and maintaining a emergency-only access to Kingswood Drive to the south. That approval added 273 units to the project. So now we're before you with phase 3, which is the remaining 72 units on 117 acres, a gross density of 0.6 DU per acre. And we have in this phase over 51 acres, approximately 44% of this phase is parks, open space and trails. And we have 2 development phases, A and B. So this is just kind of highlighting the phase 3 project. Phase A is to the north. I'm making my phases mixed up. A and B. A is to the south and B is to the north of Sanctuary Rim Drive. But you can see the darker green area is the area that we're retaining as natural open space. The lighter green areas are open space, but areas that will be graded just to accommodate the development. So the area that's in that northwest corner is an area that will be a detention facility. And then just to the east of the red line for phase 3 is the larger green area, which is the main park for the development. There are also 2 other parks in phase 1, and that larger park in phase 2, and to the south of there is a very large detention pond, which basically is the main detention pond for the phase 2 and phase 3 area. So just to put that in context, you can see the various densities there. The density has slowly been getting less and less as we've moved west. The higher density portion is in phase 1, phase 2 slightly less density, and phase 3 even less, and that's mainly due to the topographical challenges as we've moved west. So we had some conditions on the sketch plan that the density would be required to conform to the sketch plan as we move forward to the final PD site plan, that the open space, parks and trails were to exceed 20% of gross acreage, and the parks and trails would be available for public use. A forest management plan and fire mitigation plan would be enforced, and that a buffer alongside Fox Pines, Fox Run and the Kingswood subdivisions shall be maintained at 50 feet. So I'm just going to go through each of those to show how we are conforming to that. So we looked at the density areas that were identified on the sketch plan, and what I tried to do here was match them up as well as I could in terms of the actual development. And we actually do meet the density requirements. In particular, the area to the kind of pale yellow areas on the northern and southern boundaries were required to be between 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre, and we have met those with primarily 2-acre lots along the northern boundary within that kind of blob on the sketch plan. And on the south side, we actually just have the 2 lots that are at over 2 acres adjacent to Kingswood. Doesn't quite extend as far west as on the original sketch plan, and that area is maintained as open space. So we do feel that we've maintained the density requirements, and here's just a comparison of those areas and how we fall into that density range within those coloured areas. So we have met the density requirements of the sketch plan. Looking at parks and open space, we've just kind of tried to highlight the areas that are being maintained as open space and parks. Within the 3 phases, we as I mentioned before, phase 3 itself is 44% of open space, but across the entire development, we have 137 acres, which is about 30% of the entire project, which has been maintained as open space and parks. And we have, this shows all the trails, so the pink red trail at the bottom, the reason for the different colours is some of it is existing trail and some of it is proposed county trail, so that's the part of the county trail regional trail system. That is, the areas that are within Sanctuary Point are being dedicated easements to the county for their for their regional trail, and then all the blue lines are the internal trails, and the along Sanctuary Rim, we've included what we call a meandering sidewalk, so it's a little bit more attractive than a standard sidewalk, so that contributes to that overall system of trails, and we've got 9.3 miles of trails within the development. So we feel we've met those requirements of the sketch plan, and also the parks, open space and trails, other than the county trail, are going to be dedicated to Tri-View District for public use and for maintenance. So fire mitigation, that's the cover of the fire mitigation report that was submitted with the overall development. and there are requirements within the CCNRs for the community that this is a Firewise community. It's pretty much a gold standard in terms of classics projects for Firewise communities, so there are very specific standards that have to be met in terms of landscaping. NES actually does the landscape reviews for each of the individual lots, and we have to make sure that they meet Firewise requirements. So in addition to new landscaping on the properties not being being allowed to be too close to the homes, there is also a requirement for thinning of existing vegetation, so that has taken place as well. And then in addition to that, the buildings maintain the use of fire retardant materials as required by the Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Department. So we met that requirement of the sketch plan, and just here to talk about the distance between Kingswood subdivision, Fox Pines is to the east, so the only part of that original requirement that is within this phase 3 is the relationship with Kingswood, and we've maintained that 50-foot separation from the back of the lot. What we try to show here is that the area that's likely to be developed for a home is that front part of the lot. The back part will remain pretty much natural as it goes down the slope. So the other thing I would point out here, even though it wasn't a sketch plan requirement, we've also maintained a 50-foot buffer separation on the north side with Higby Estates, which pretty much is a continuation of the buffer and trail corridor on the northern boundary, which we've provided in other phases of the plan. So some other requirements which related more to traffic, we were required to complete the east-west collector once the development reaches the phase 1, phase 2 line, which we did. That was addressed at length with the phase 2 project. Kingswood, where it extends into Sanctuary Point, should be discontinuous. We actually started with that position, but ultimately we went to the point where there is no continuation of Kingswood into Sanctuary Point. It is just emergency access only. The next bullet point related to the resurfacing of Kingswood, assuming it was going to be used as a secondary access, but as it's not, we're not required to resurface Kingswood for just the emergency access. Responsibility for providing the second access. We have that secondary access for emergency vehicles provided via Kingswood, but now we actually have 2 points of access for the entire development anyway. Sanctuary Point connects from Sanctuary Rim Drive, connects from one end to the other. And construction traffic on Kingswood, that was a concern in phase 2, but as Kingswood Drive no longer provides access other than for emergency purposes, that matter's been addressed also. And just to talk a little bit about access and traffic, we wanted to provide an overall picture of the roads in this area. So the blue highlighted areas are collector streets. The purple, which is Baptist Road, is a principal arterial. From the point at which it's just before Kingswood, where it goes to 4 lanes, is principal arterial, and then to the east of that is a minor arterial. We've identified on there what the load of those streets is. So a typical load for design load for a collector road is 10,000 trips a day. For a minor arterial it's 20, and for a major arterial it's 20,000 and 40,000. So Sanctuary Rim Drive is 10,000 daily trips. The development itself will generate approximately 6,400. That's based on the the Institute of Transportation Engineers estimate that just over 10 trips per day for a single family household. That always strikes me as a lot, but I suppose for someone like me who probably does 2 to 3 trips a day versus a family with lots of kids who are probably going out on multiple trips, I guess that average seems logical. So that's what we apply. That's well within the capacity of Sanctuary Rim Drive. And the subsequent slides I'm going to show is just the distribution of those trips. Initially with, sorry, did I have that on the previous slide? Yeah, so this first one shows the distribution assuming no connection of Glen Eagle to Higby. That's kind of your interim position. And then assuming with Home Place Ranch that gets connected to Higby, then that distribution will change. That's based on the traffic studies that have been done for both projects. So that shows the likely change in distribution following the connection of Gleneagle Road to Gleneagle Drive, beg your pardon, to Higby Road. So I just wanted to finish with some slides showing Sanctuary Point development. You hopefully are familiar with it by now, but it's proven to be a very attractive, high-quality, single-family residential community, very sought after, nice quality of homes. We've retained a lot of the existing vegetation. The trees have, as I noted before, had to be thinned out because of the Firewise requirements. But in most of the backyard areas, there are existing trees that have been retained with that separation from the homes. And then that's a play area in phase A, again, retaining some of the existing trees. Similarly, along Sanctuary Rim Drive, the meandering sidewalk, trees kept in place where we can. So that's the reason for the meandering, to try and avoid taking out a lot of the trees, and just simple things like a little bit more attractive and higher end street lights. We had to do a lot of negotiation with MVEA to get those approved, but we managed to do that, and just creates a bit of a unique feel for the community. And high quality homes, a lot of them have xeriscaping, and again meeting Firewise requirements, and consistent with the landscape policy objectives of the code. And with that, that's a summary of where we are with phase 3, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? Okay.
Oh wait, I have some. On the left-hand side of the slide that's up, it says proposed home place annexation. Maybe this question should be from staff. Have we already annexed that? Is that already in place for us?
For Home Place Ranch?
That little square that says, in order to connect to Gleneagle Drive, is that connection already in place, or is that something that that's going to be done here?
There's a connection right now, but there's going to be a further connection when Home Place Ranch starts their construction.
Okay, so who's responsible for that connection to
Home
make?
Place Ranch will be responsible.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the plan to clarify. Yeah, I think that's the reason that's there, because that was in place. That dates from the 2006 sketch plan, the actual reference to the home place proposed annexation. But the actual street has been constructed. Sanctuary Rim has been constructed across to Gleneagle Drive, so there is a connection there to go to Gleneagle Drive,
Okay.
to connect south through Promontory Point. But the northern connection of Gleneagle to Higby Road is part of the Home Place Ranch project, and that's their responsibility to construct. But Lauren, do you want to talk about the agreement you had with?
So part of the PD site plan 2 approval was that connection, that 1,400-foot connection from the west boundary of Sanctuary Rim Drive, or Sanctuary Point, through that corner of Home Place Ranch to Promontory Point. And so we obtained an access easement from the owners of Home Place Ranch to allow us to build that. And then we were allowed 40 land use permits, basically building permits, in the southern portion of phase 2. It was filing 4. And we were allowed 40 land use permits and no certificates of occupancy until that connection was made. And so before we could make that, before we could get the COs, had to make sure that was made. So we made that connection. And then at the tail end of that, there was some concern about a maintenance agreement. And so when we came into plat filing 5, which is just north of Sanctuary Rim Drive and north of filing 4, we worked with Triview Metro District on a maintenance agreement. So they plow that stretch of road connecting to Sanctuary Rim Drive. And so that's all been handled through the town of Monument and is a full use access point.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all of them? Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. This is a public hearing item, so I will open it up to the public. Would anyone like to speak for or against this ordinance? Mr. Kimple.
Ken Kimple from St. Lawrence Way, Promontory Point. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Board of Trustees, good evening. Here to talk about a few things, mainly safety. I'll go on the record saying I'm not against development, but just smart development. I've heard the Nest talk about Sanctuary Rim Drive is connected, the road's in use. I would not consider it a road because it does not have curbs, it does not have sidewalks, it does not have street markings. There's a sign up there between Promontory Point and where this paved path begins. It says end city maintenance. However, there are construction vehicles using it. There are contractor, subcontractor vehicles using this to go up Glen Eagle and go into Sanctuary Rim Drive. And also residents are already driving to and from Sanctuary Point using this. I've personally almost been hit the other week when I was crossing the sidewalk in Promontory Point going up to St. Lawrence with my dogs while someone's at a Lexus. A lady was driving with her kids in the car. She wasn't paying attention because she was on the phone. So I would wonder about the traffic study of when it was actually conducted, how it was conducted, what methods were used, what traffic routes, roads were studied to apply all this methodology. El Paso County major transportation corridor plan back in 2012, already stated in 2010, Highway 25, 83, and 105 are already considered saturated or congested. Baptist Road is already considered on the verge of being congested, and we keep on developing and putting more homes in there, Home Place Ranch, Sanctuary Point. When back in the early 2000s, Promontory Point, Jackson Creek residents, along with Kingswood residents, came to the Board of Trustees to argue the volume of homes that were going to be developed in Promontory Point, which was 290. Classic did a good thing by reducing the number of homes down to 260 to agreement because of lot size and because of evacuation purposes. Promontory Point only has one exit out in case of an emergency. That is Glen Eagle to Baptist Road. Now we're adding Home Place Ranch and people driving Sanctuary Rim to come down. They're not going to drive to go east out of Sanctuary Point to join Baptist if there's a fire, because the fire is going to come from up in the mountain area, the top of the range, coming down towards the town. So now you have all Jackson Creek residents, Promontory Point, Home Place Ranch, and Sanctuary Point driving down Glen Eagle to get onto Baptist Road. What I would like to see would be for the board to address infrastructure, work with the developers, and getting Higbee Road connected for another access out. I think that is a need now instead of waiting till later on. And that's for safety reasons. I've heard Tri-View's talking with El Paso County about taking it over. Tri-View does not have the manpower as it is to maintain what they already are responsible for, Jackson Creek, Promontory Point, and the shopping center, stuff like that. So I think with the help from the developers, with the Board of Trustees, with staff, engaging with El Paso County to come up with a solution of connecting a road now to go over to Higbee or some other emergency escape routes, if you will, to develop for safety reasons. In the plan, the town has always asked new development should add to, not detract from the quality of life. I think this is a double-edged sword. I think the homes are a good thing. I think Classic does a great job. I just think safety reason right now, when back in the early 2000s, we were urging the board, you can pull up the transcripts and in the papers in OCN, it talks about the board was adamant about safety, worried about evacuations. And those of us that have been around long enough have seen several fires in this community. I've stood up here before and I'll say it again. It's not if, it's when. It's when the next fire is going to happen. The town does not have an evacuation plan, evacuation route. They haven't addressed this. There's a whole bunch of things that come along with this in consideration with all these developments that I think we need to consider. So, lastly, again, I would ask about the traffic study do these traffic studies that the developers use, When, how, what method was used, what traffic routes, roads were studied, and how is this play or go against or for the El Paso County traffic plan that they have a study in as well. That's all I have. Is, again, consideration for safety, I think, is first and foremost in any development. And I think we're kind of missing the mark on these with Home Place Ranch and Sanctuary Point, with 600 homes now being online. That Sanctuary Rim Drive is not, I do not consider that a road. Again, there's no street markings, no sidewalks, no street, no lighting for it at all. It's just a paved path that connects into Sanctuary Point. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kemper. Would anybody else like to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, I will return it to the applicant for a rebuttal.
Thank you very much. There's a couple of points I'd like to comment on. Mr. Kimpel was kind of making some very broad observations, I would say, about safety in the community and evacuation routes. I'm not going to try to address those. I don't think that's necessarily the responsibility of this developer, but I will talk specifically about this project. Clearly, as we've gone through the development in phase one, we had a temporary emergency access for that phase, going through the lot and detention area into Fox Run Park. And as we've moved west, we have a secondary emergency access, which I just referred to via Kingswood. And then the connection to Sanctuary, at both ends of Sanctuary Rim Drive. So we have, as we've gone through this development, we have had communications with Tri Lakes and Monument Fire Department, and they have approved every single phase of this development for emergency access. So we are meeting their requirements, and it's not just the two ends. We do have Kingswood as a secondary and permanent emergency access point. The other point I would like to reiterate, which I made in my presentation, is this community, unlike many, abides by FireWise requirements. There's been significant fire mitigation. All the homes are built to fire retardant standards, so the quality of the development and the controls that are in the CCNRs and vegetation will make this probably safer than most other communities in terms of fire issues. Going to the connection of Sanctuary Rim Drive, obviously that is just a temporary situation. We discussed that and negotiated that with phase two on the nature of that connection. Yes, it does currently have no curb, gutter and sidewalk, but it will have. When Home Place Ranch comes forward with its first phase of development, they will complete that road and make it bring it to this town standard road cross section. So yes, it is not to a full standard right now, but that is not going to be the permanent situation. Clearly, if somebody's driving on their cell phone, it could be somebody in Promontory Point, it could be somebody in Sanctuary Point, it could be somebody visiting the area. I'm not sure that type of safety issue is, again, the responsibility of this developer. Reference was made to the traffic studies. As this project has been really going since 2006, the traffic studies have accumulated. We had an original master traffic study with the sketch plan, and as each phase has gone through the process, we have provided an updated traffic report. The traffic reports are current as of when we submit the applications. With phase 3, we actually did some updates, so that was pretty current, I think, up to December last year, in terms of the recent context of the traffic studies. Reference is also made to the El Paso County Major Transportation Corridor Plan. That identifies traffic conditions in 2040 and in 2060. And in doing that, it anticipates all current development proposals that have already been approved, which in the case of Sanctuary Point, the sketch plan has been approved, so that is built into the equation. Anticipated projects such as Home Place Ranch and other projects throughout the county are built into that equation, so it projects forward to 2040 and 2060. So those identifications of congestion are future projections, not current conditions. I think that is probably all I wanted to say in response. Do you have anything, Lauren?
No, I know one side, from the safety standpoint of access through Promontory Point, when we were about to make the connection, I reached out to the Director of Transportation at District 38, because frequently they have an issue getting school buses up Baptist Hill there, past Kingswood going east, and so reached out. It's not part of their route, but in an emergency situation, I wanted her to be aware, you're obviously fighting less grade coming through Promontory into the backside of Sanctuary Point, the west side of Sanctuary Point, and so that she was aware of that access point, and so she appreciated that. We've obviously worked with them to adjust school bus routes throughout the neighborhood as construction's going on, so it's an open dialogue to try to keep everybody and everything as safe as we can.
Mr. Mayor, I just had two, oh, I'm sorry.
So that'll close the public comment portion of this ordinance, and we'll bring it back to the board for questions for town staff or the applicant.
I have two friendly questions. The first one, learning for myself and maybe my colleagues. So when you do a preliminary traffic study as like prior to phase one and look at the entire project, as you're getting done, going into phase two, so you'll modify, you'll look at that and see any changes, transitions. So it's an ongoing document, so to
Correct.
speak.
Something new in the most recent traffic update, the traffic study update, was the fact that in previous traffic calculations, there was no connection made, correct? Going to the west to connect to Gleaming Drive through Promontory, there was no traffic there because there was never a road connection. So LSC had to go back out and do traffic counts based on that connection point to see what additional traffic was being put onto Gleaming Drive.
And I'd also like to emphasise, I think this is something that's sometimes lost, is any traffic study doesn't just look at now, it looks at least 20 years into the future. It takes into account existing background traffic, projected background traffic from all developments that are known at the time, and adds those into the discussion to be able to project what road improvements are going to be needed, if there's new traffic signals are warranted, and so on. So it's not just looking at current conditions, it's taking into account everything that's projected and for the future, at least 20 years, and what's required to address those future conditions.
And again, it sounds like you're being very proactive, and there's gonna be good and bad, and we've encountered in the past maybe some questionable studies. My second question before my comment is, if the world were perfect, when would you anticipate, once you start, how long until this project's completed?
I wish, we all wish in the building and development world that we had a crystal ball, right? I mean, things are moving well, and we're making it through this project at a pretty good pace, but who knows what the future holds, right? So, while I'd love to tell you that we could forecast that 2023 would be, we're through this phase, or 22 or 24.
I know there's a lot of
Yeah,
variables.
there's so many variables. Like this, we would have loved to have developed this in 2007. We had it approved in '06. We would have liked to have proceeded with the first PD site plan 1 approval, the first filing 1 plat, and obviously that sat on a shelf, a proverbial shelf, for 9 years before we could proceed again.
And just a comment from some of, myself and some of the senior members of the board, we're gonna miss you guys, because we've been seeing you all these years. So I just wanna make that
We got a few more
comment.
plats to visit with you on.
So, thank you very much.
Trustee Friedman?
Yeah, just a question. You know, I mean, traffic studies are one thing. I mean, you can speculate when they're done, all that. I remember when they were doing the gas station off Baptist Road, and literally we had they said that there were 4 cars that passed between this time and this time. So it's gonna be minimal traffic impact. And we literally have semis turning in insane directions. So I get you did the study. Study says it's safe, it's fine. Here we are today. Let's look at reality. We have a resident who says there is a very real safety concern. What do you do? How
So
do you respond?
what we have done, and we really have to fall back on, we do traffic counts, right? They'll put counters out at peak hours, and they incorporate all of those numbers into that count. Now, they're factoring in a multitude of things. They're the engineer. I can't even pretend to get into that level of detail, but they're anticipating where that traffic flow, that we showed you that on one of the slides, that anticipated a certain percentage would go west, percentage east. Well, people may prefer to go one direction or the other, and that may skew those numbers, but ultimately, when we look at this project as a whole, I mean, we're evaluating 72 lots, which round numbers, typically you're creating 10 traffic trips per day, per lot, per unit. And so we're adding 720 overall traffic count to this. In Sanctuary Point, I think the slide that you showed, we were in excess of 6,000, almost 7,000 trips, somewhere in that range. Ultimately, with the round numbers, typically, we're running about 6,000 trips on a road that's designed for 10,000. And so the safety side of it, when people are driving distracted, that's a concern. But again, regardless of development or where you're at, people are not paying attention the way they should. We opted to put up, after talking to Transportation at D38, we put up the school bus sign ahead on Home Place Ranch before you enter Promontory, because there's a lot of school bus stops. We knew that. Will it help? Let's put that down. I know we work hard to monitor our contractors. We're not gonna keep them from taking that access. We discussed that heavily on the PD site plan 2 approval. But we've attempted to manage that. As far as speeding, I too take that access. I will go down through there because I can see what the flow is, what people are doing. I've almost been hit going through there, and it was a resident within Promontory that is used to not having traffic come off from the north, and they turned in front of me. They apologized, they waved, but again, those are things we can't manage as we look at this. We have to go with what the criteria is set forth in the development standards and manage to that, and I think we've done a really outstanding job on this project.
And I agree with that, and it's a conversation we should have been having all along, and the reality is, you made the comment, I've heard it from a different developer on another project that we're talking about here, is we're not required to. And it's where we need to look in the future, especially now as we're redeveloping our development codes, on how to address these things proactively, instead of here we are in phase 3, when the reality is we probably should have addressed this head on 1 and 2. Going to your evacuation plan, emergency evacuation plan, am I understanding you said there is a formal evacuation plan?
They don't do, each phase and each plat goes through referral agencies, whether it's El Paso County, Tri-Lakes Fire, and so Jamie Baumgartner has to review every single one of these. And obviously, early on in the project, I met him on site numerous times to help understand what, why, and how of everything. We've been the poster child for Firewise. It's the first ground-up development that meets Firewise requirements. And so that's getting rid of certain fuels and thinning of fuels and landscape materials. And we meet Jamie out there. And so a neighborhood like this would be required to have 2 points of access. We've got Sanctuary Room Drive is continuous, but it gives people the option to go east, out to Baptist, to go west down Glen Eagle. But we actually have a 3rd point of access, which is that permanent emergency access off of Kingswood. So for the county and for safety vehicles to turn around, we did put a small cul-de-sac on Sanctuary Point, just north of Kingswood, so they can turn around. We actually finished the gate for the emergency access, so people aren't using that. It's a large decorative gate. We installed that and completed install yesterday, and then that will have a Knox box on it. So Knox box, commercial buildings, fire access gates, that'll be keyed to the Tri-Lakes Fire key. And so when they pull up, they have the ability to unlock that box, get the key to the gate, and access that. And frankly, I told Jamie he can put his own lock. We'll do the Knox box for the key, but they can put their own lock. We have no need to have a key to that lock. We don't need to put that lock on there and put a special key in for them. That's their access, and so we've got that graded out and gate installed. So we've worked not only with each PD site plan approval, but with each individual filing that goes before Jamie and Tri-Lakes Fire for review to make sure that we're meeting what they feel is appropriate for safety.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Now, just add a little slightly to that. I mentioned the landscape reviews of the individual lots. In some situations, we've had meetings out there with representatives of the Forest Service, the Fire Service, to address certain lot requirements to make sure that we are meeting those Firewise requirements. So we're not taking this lightly, and we are thoroughly reviewing every individual lot to make sure they're meeting those requirements.
And we have Dave Root, he's the forester from CSU that basically wrote the program for Firewise, and he manages that. And so we had him down, obviously initially in phase 1, he was down every few months. And now that we're kind of understand the full process, we'll bring him down annually to look at what we're doing and see if he has additional recommendations. And he has. At one point we thinned up. He said, you don't have to thin as many as you are, right? Phase 1, we're trying to meet the letter of the law. You're like, well, there's ways to do this when you're away from structures, et cetera. So we've worked very close with them.
And just out of curiosity, is there a community engagement or education piece? I imagine buying the homes here as far as?
We do, we
you know?
incorporate, so Firewise is not only in the covenants, but it's in the design guidelines. So when they receive the design guidelines to lay out landscape requirements and all of that, they get the full Firewise list of what they have to do. And then we've been doing an education, informal education, kind of class at the neighborhood barbecue every summer. Tri-Lakes Fire brings a truck or an ambulance up, and then we're able to answer questions if people have them in regards to Firewise.
Great, thank you.
Any additional questions from the board?
I just want to bring up one thing. I agree with Mr. Kemple that we do need to be proactive on building, looking at this. And I know it's not their responsibility on the continuation of Glen Eagle Drive. And at the time when Home Place Ranch came in, I think the county commissioner, for some reason, county, I guess, owns the street, Higby Road, and we own pretty much everything up to to there. And they wouldn't let us put a road in. They basically said best we could do is emergency access. So at the time, it was brought up that we would be considering annexing that section of Higby Road. And I would just like to task the staff here, what does it take to get that, we're right up against the line, so I think we fulfill the legal requirements. What does it take to get that annexation done so that we can get that road done?
Which annexation again?
Higby Road,
Higby
just
Road.
that
We're working
section.
we're working with that right now with the county. We had a meeting last week with them,
Okay.
and we're moving forward with that. We met with Jim, with Triview and with the county. And, we're working on that. We're, met with their county engineer, and they want to give it to us as soon as possible. But there's a lot of legal work that needs to be done on that.
Yeah,
I just want to add, I think that's going to be a great success with the work of Triview and our town manager. I don't think this is the issue. Nobody wants to write a check, and I can understand it because it's rather substantial. Will it happen? 100%. Is it going to happen tomorrow? It's not. It's just a fiscal responsibility. Who's going to pay?
okay.
Everybody's in 100% agreement. Every developer that comes in, the board, that has to go through. It does. From a
Right.
safety, from a feasibility, traffic, everything else. So I think it's a home run, as is Annex, and Triview takes over. Look, our town manager is pretty creative. He's done some successful things. Forest Lakes, by example, this could maybe be something that he's tasked with. 'Cause it's not gonna happen overnight, but we know.
Me and Jim both are working with developers around there to try to get that done. We think that the annexation of Higby Road is going to be able to allow us not only to create the connection, but also we'll be able to put roundabouts on Higby Road that'll help some of the slowing down of the traffic along Higby also.
Okay, great. Well, I want to see that move forward so we don't get behind the 8 ball.
Definitely.
And so, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay,
Want a motion?
if there is a motion, I'll take a motion.
Motion for ordinance number 03-2020, an ordinance approving a final plan development site plan for Sanctuary Point, Phase 3.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Romero?
Trustee Koopman,
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes,
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Romanello.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Next item, resolution. Resolution number 03-2020, a resolution adopting a member to the Board of, to the Planning Commission and a member to the Board of Adjustments. Mr. Manning?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. We are fortunate enough to have some applications. As you know, last month we made some appointments. We have a couple more now. The resolution that is before you will fill up the last alternate position on the Planning Commission and add one member to the Board of Adjustments, which is very much needed. Even though they don't meet much, it is important to have that body in place. So again, this resolution appoints Chad Bloom to the Board of Adjustment and Sean White to the Planning Commission as an alternate.
Okay, questions from the board?
And they know that once they sign up, they're on for life.
And they're gonna be trained trained.
Lifetime.
All right, we wanna make sure they know.
When was the last time the Board of Adjustments met?
We met actually twice on setback requirements. I believe it was for decks, where the setback, you know, some of the houses are pretty short in the rear yard. So that was the last time, I would say that's over a year ago.
Now, there was one we did on 105, there was,
Yeah.
somebody wanted to do a deck, and then there was another one, because of sun and proximity, that was it. That's all we've done.
Any other questions for the board, or I'll look for a motion?
Motion to approve resolution 03-2020, resolution appointing member to the planning commission and a member to the board of adjustments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Romero?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes?
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. Okay, next item, that motion passes 7-0. Public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Would anybody like to make a comment? Seeing none, we will move on to board authorization items. Do we have any board authorization items from staff? No.
I'd like to just kind of, we heard Trustee Stevens, and as far as, I think giving formal direction in this capacity as far as authorization to aggressively pursue or somehow figure out how to move that needle forward on that annexation of Higby Road. But with that, I think it's important that we seriously, as a board, take what Mr. Kimple said to heart. Safety, this is not the first time that safety has come up when it comes into, in correlation with development. And time and time again, me personally, I'm tired of hearing developers say, well, we don't have to. Like, it doesn't matter if they have to, as far as when we're genuinely addressing safety, and these are valid concerns being presented, to have them say, well, we don't have to, that comes down to procedural. And we talked about that at the board workshop prior to this evening's meeting. And I would like to see direction for staff to work with planning and the folks involved with our code update to address the safety side of development, the process of development, the community involvement of development. I want to see emergency evacuation plans. I mean, those are things that need to be addressed. Yeah, you have, 600 people living in a forest. Do they know how to get out when it's on fire? Not if, but when. They don't. And that is our responsibility as we are approving and stamping the go-ahead on, the last I counted, well over 1,000 homes that are approved to come in that haven't started yet. We need to look at this, and there needs to be a component with the code update when it comes to the development process and safety during and after that process. So I don't know what the direction looks like, other than I'd like to see that as a critical part of it.
Definitely.
Before we get to board agreement on that, in your past experience, and maybe Mr. Rivera can shed some light on this also, how does that come about? Does that come from fire department and police department bring forward a emergency plan, or in your background, where have you seen something like this come about?
Two things we're working on right now is the Emergency Operations Centers plan, and then an emergency management plan. We're working on those right now. They're going to be part of our strategic management plan that we're working on this year with all of our staff, with the police department and with the fire department. And so that's two things we're working on this year. But what I hear you saying and what I hear Mr. Stevens saying is that this is something that you want our developers and our staff and our consultants to work on this year, along with the board, to make sure that we have safe routes out of these developments that we're proposing in the future. And so I think that's something that we need to look at.
I mean, with something as simple as 3 exits to a community that has over so many homes, is that what we're?
Well, I mean, in exits and emergency exits is one component of it.
Right.
Utilization of something that's there now in the incorrect or inappropriate way, yes. It's not the developer's responsibility or our responsibility, at least least from a policy standpoint, to, make sure the lady driving the Lexus isn't on her phone right before she hits Mr. Kemple. Thankfully, she saw you. But that's just part of the bigger picture that needs to
Right.
be looked at. We had a development with the cul-de-sacs, and there's literally, multiple hundreds of homes and one way out, and everybody's locked into these cul-de-sacs. That's a component that needs to be looked at. So yes, emergency exits, fire evacuation plans. It's gonna take working with the developers, with the fire department, and it's gonna take not the attitude of, well, we don't have to,
Right.
so we're not going to, or the norm isn't, or telling me that a new truck stop off of Baptist Road is only gonna have a minimal impact on road. I mean, we counted only 4 cars in a 5-hour period. I mean, it's laughable. Safety is what it comes down to.
Right.
I would like to add something while everyone is discussing and developing and talking. Maybe we could just simply have more police coverage in the area at specific times to kind of, make people step on the brakes or look up from their phone.
I agree. There's, with Lee here and everything like that, with the implementation of our new police chief coming there, that's gonna be a focus that we're gonna be looking at this year.
Thank you.
Just a comment to add, and I think Trustee Koopman's right. And our guest tonight even made a comment that kind of caught me off guard, but we don't have to do that. But I think until we create the value of the community, because I don't think that's created, I don't think we do that. I think the contractors do what they want. And doesn't mean that we can't make it a win for both sides, but the reality is this is gonna be a bedroom community. It's not gonna be this economic development that we're dreaming of. And with that means more houses and more traffic. So we can't go backwards. There's still really good team members to us, but I think we can set some guidelines moving forward. But it's gonna take from fire, from the town hall, it's a whole group thing where then the developers, they wanna go beyond the call of duty, because as we hear every time, they're doing the bare minimums. And it's fair, because we're not asking more, but we have to be looking over the hill. I don't think we're ever gonna fix the woman or the man on the cell phone driving. I think that's a separate topic. That's a major, major issue in this town. And it is with a designated certain sex in a minivan. And it's something that needs to be fixed, because somebody's gonna get hurt. So I think it's a great thing for the town to be working on, our town management.
Thank you.
Back to board authorizations, do you feel that you understand the direction? And
I
does the
do.
board agree with that direction? Okay.
Definitely do.
Could you you mentioned something on this emergency response, something, what?
Emergency management plan.
Okay.
Do you want me to explain that? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'll save it.
Okay.
Maybe put on a tick where maybe just, you can let us know.
Good. Yep.
Because I know 2 years ago, I know the Springs and other agencies were very proactive, and they've already set theirs up, and they've set locations, and I don't know if we chose to play with them or not. So something
We
to
will
look at.
be.
Yeah.
We definitely will be.
Yeah, because they're done. They've
Mhm.
already set up. We just didn't get on the bandwagon, so, okay.
Do we have any other board authorization items?
I just have a question for Mr. Foreman. Are you working with TriView as well then on these emergency plans?
Yes, we are. We will be.
Great.
Definitely. Jim's a great partner in this, so he's definitely easy to work with.
Okay, town manager report. Mr. Foreman, do you have anything to add to your report?
No, I don't right now. Just be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from the board on the town manager report?
I would just ask, and I'm not gonna pinpoint, because I read your report, and I thought it was some good information. I think some of the things, maybe give a little bit more specifics, so we don't have to be sending you emails or asking you.
Such as?
Well, by example, I was looking at the code enforcement, I saw 20 and 3. Well, what were those 20 and what were those 3?
Okay,
Because if
just
they're
like
written
the-
on there, they're of importance.
Yep.
But if they were 20 weeds,
Just like the building inspection report that you get in my report, you'll see a similar report to that in the future.
yeah, I mean,
It'll-
it's just more a curiosity. I mean, that's
Mhm.
like something's going on.
Right.
So what is it? That's all.
We'll let you know.
Okay, moving on to board comments. Comments from the board.
I have a question for Mr. Tharnish. A few times when I've driven to a board meeting going west on Second, that bike lane on the right, cars pull into that and think that they can just speed ahead and turn right at that stop sign onto Beacon Light. And I looked down on the bike lane, I saw the symbol for the bicyclist, you know, it's about this big, I guess. At night, it's hard to see. I was wondering if, like, the words in bright white paint can be put on the street in that lane that say bike lane, because people aren't paying attention to those very faded, you know, little bicycle signs. And if, you know, people cutting in there and they don't see somebody coming down that's riding their bike at night, like when the weather's nicer, that's not good.
So is that a bike lane?
It's a bike
I'm
lane.
asking, I'm not being
Yeah,
smart.
it's a bike
So,
lane.
so as it starts, that is a bike lane?
Yes.
Do you make right? Okay.
Sometimes they have that paint that glows in the dark at night too.
Yes, we will take a look at that and also some other areas where we have bike lanes on Angel Avenue and a few other minor areas. So we can make some more visibility improvements.
Great. I am gonna call Triview, because there is another over by, when you come out of, that main road out of Texas Roadhouse, between Texas Roadhouse and Walmart. There was a stop sign there, there's just a pole there, there's no stop sign. And then the ground where it says stop is really faded, so I'm gonna call Triview about that. Because people speed right through that and don't realize that they're supposed to actually be stopping, but there's no sign there, so people aren't paying attention.
Wouldn't that be that's in the parking lot, so it would
Yeah.
be the private owner, it wouldn't be Triview?
Tom, that's private.
It's the owner.
All the traffic control patterns and stop signs and things like that are responsibility of either the owners or the builders of those developments. And the Walmarts and Home Depots over the years have had issues with stop signs missing. Sometimes they get hit by the big trucks, things. And usually we have to contact whoever the property manager is or whoever Home Depot uses. We've had, I'm going back a few years, but there's fire hydrants sometimes that get hit, where they would have to bring in a contractor to fix it, and then we used to show up to make sure they fixed it to our standard.
We'll contact
So
them.
you'll contact?
Yeah, we'll contact.
Thank you.
Tom, just a question for you, since you're knowledgeable on this. So Leather Chaps, Jackson Creek Parkway, going north, are they completed with that road, or they still have to put a final surface down on that for their expansion?
I believe the pavement is not finished. If you look at, as you're driving down, you'll see the curb line is set to the final grade, but you'll see a drop down of probably an inch and a half or so. I can't remember what the measurement is.
Yeah, I think in the spring, they're coming back with their final
lit.
lit.
Layer coming on.
It's
That's
called a
what
lift.
Okay, so what it is right now is, that's not the final project?
Right.
Okay, 'cause I was gonna say, if it was, we don't wanna use those guys.
It's,
It's pretty rough.
they ran into a lot of weather in October, and so they have a final lift that they'll put on there.
Okay, thank you.
And have we moved the speed limits back up until that final lift?
I think they're 35 right now. Was the
Okay.
last time I looked the other day.
Last time I saw they were 25.
Yeah, I think I looked at them Saturday and they were 35. I set my cruise.
Any other comments from the board? Oh, wait, hold on 1 second. We do have the opportunity of hosting a Cub Scout group here, possibly next week. Any board members that would like to, please let me know and I will shoot you an email. Laugh about it.
You tricked me, Mr. Mayor.
And just a reminder, the 30th is that land development public workshop.
Of January?
Yes.
Is there a way to use the texting system to notify people of those types of events, like the community workshop?
Yes, we do have that feature.
All right, is that something that we could do as well?
No problem. We can do that.
Just to broaden the exposure?
Okay, next item on the agenda, executive session. Trustee Koopman, will you make a motion for executive session?
Absolutely. We'll make a motion to enter executive session to develop a negotiations strategy and instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E regarding the salary and compensation package of the future chief of police, B, I further move to adjourn the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, Ms. Romero?
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes?
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Okay. We will now move into executive session here in this room. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Mayor Wilson, what time was that land development on the 30th? What time?
3 to 7 p.m. So it's kind of an open house. You can come and go.
Is it important?
How are you?
Is it important
Living
for
a
us to
dream?
come and go?
I don't think it's important for
Is it the public, is it for the public?
One day at a time.
I think we can show up and